Welcome back, Chapter 5, Section 4, entitled Adding and Subtracting Fractions with Unlike Denominators. So we just got done last section dealing with adding like fractions. Now we're going to deal with unlike fractions. So the unlike fractions are fractions with different denominators. So that's like 1/3, 1/2, 1/4, 10/8, and so on. All those denominators are different. They are unlike fractions. They can be made into like fractions, though, by looking for the least common denominator, or LCD. So the first thing you're going to want to do for this example, 3/4 plus 1/5, is find a like denominator. Because once they're the same, then it's easy to add or subtract. So, write out the problem and look at the 4 and the 5. So what you're going to do is, for this one, you're going to care about 4 and 5, and you're going to find now the least common multiple. Well, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 5, 10, 15, 20. You should see that the least common multiple is 20. That means for the fraction 3/4 and 1/5, the least common denominator will be 20. So we determined to get a 20, 4 times 5, 5 times 4. And then you got to do it to the top as well. So you multiply by the number that makes the denominator 20 to get 15/20 plus 4/20. So once you have that, you simply look at the numerators. 15 and 4 gives you 19. And then just the denominator is 20. So the answer to this is 19/20, and that cannot be reduced. All right, review it. Name two methods to find the least common multiple of two numbers. So this you're going to have to review. If you held on to this, the notes for 4.5, you should be able to go back and find them. If you went back, you could, method 1 is to list all multiples. So one of the methods is to list all the multiples and then find pick the smallest one in common. The other method was to do a prime factorization and basically once you have the prime factorizations, you look at the common factors do the prime factors, and then you would multiply the common factors once, and all individual ones. Okay, so find the prime factors, multiply, and so on. And for this right here, you really should see an example. So if we were looking for the least common multiple of 6 and 8, method number 1 would say do 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, and so on. And 8 would be 8, 16, 24, 32, and so on. And you basically then pick the smallest one that they have in common. This is the least common multiple of those two numbers. So that means any fraction that was like this, you would have to make it into 24ths. Method number 2 is to do the prime factorizations. And so for 6, that would be 2 times 3. And for the 8, that would be 2 times 2 times 2. And so what you do is you multiply the common factors. So here's a common factor once. So it'd be 2 times. And then you multiply all of these together. So it'd be 2 times 2 times 2 times 3, which ends up being 24, which is the same as we got up here. Now, this is actually probably easier, but is more work. This is probably a little bit harder, but once you get the hang of it, will be less time and less work. So, look in here. 3/5 and 1/6. Well, we look at 5 and 6, and I'm going to use the listing way. You'd have 5, this is method number 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and I ran out of room. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. So I look at these and I find that these two are the smallest one they have in common. So the least common denominator is 30. Well, how do we get to 30? 5 times 6, 6 times 5. And when we multiply this, you get 18 thirtieths plus 5 thirtieths. And just like before, you keep the denominator the same, but you add or subtract the numerator. So 18 minus 5 is 13 thirtieths. So my answer ends up being 13 thirtieths. All right, so let's work these out. A, 4 and 3, that'd be 4, 8, 12. That's 3, 6, 9, 12. 12 is our least common denominator. So 1/4, you need to make the 4, it needs to become a 12 in the denominator, plus the 3 needs to become a 12, and we do that by multiplying. 4 times 3, and 3 times 4. So 1/4 becomes 3/12, 2/3 becomes 8/12, and now looking at the numerators, you get 11/12. Letter B, 6 and 8. Oh, we just did this a little bit ago. 6 is 6, 12, 18, 24. 8 is 8, 16, 24. That tells us 24 is our least common denominator. So our denominator is 24 minus a 24 in the denominator. So now look at 5. Well, you'd have to multiply this by 4. Multiply this side by 3. That becomes 20 24ths. And this becomes 9 24ths. And as we subtract, you end up with 11 24ths. So, some story problems now. Use the table to find the fraction of adopted dogs in one town that are either golden retrievers or mixed breeds. So here's golden retrievers. Here's a mixed breed. And we're looking at 5 and 25. Well, 5 and 25, the least common denominator would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And that tells us right away 25 is our least common denominator. So now I know what the least common denominator is. I now have to realize that to get to 25, 25 times 1, 5 times 5. So you're going to be multiplying each part of the fraction by the same number. That makes 7 25ths. This becomes 10 25ths. 7 25ths plus 10 25ths. Add the numerators. Becomes 17 25ths. So, of the dogs adopted, 17 25ths are mixed breeds. All right, so use the table to find the fraction of the orders that are for either vanilla or chocolate ice cream. All right, well, vanilla, chocolate, that's 1/6 or 2/9. Well, let's do a least common denominator for 6 and 9. I'm going to use the method of doing the list. And it fairly quickly tells me that 18 is our new denominator. So we're going to be adding 18ths. Well, what do we multiply by? We got to multiply the 6 by 3 and the 9 by 2. So 1 times 3 is 3, 6 times 3 is 18. 2 times 2 is 4, 9 times 2 is 18. Now 3 plus 4 over 18 gives me 7 18ths. That is the number of, that is the fraction of either vanilla or chocolate ice cream. All right, the first step, remember this please. Maybe circle this or underline some stuff. The first step in evaluating an algebraic expression is replacing the variables with the numbers. You can say plug in if you want. All right, so first thing you got to do, evaluate an expression, is to plug in. P is 5/6. Q is 1/2. So all we did was we took what we knew and plugged it into the expression. So least common denominator between 5 and 6. The least common denominator between 5 and 6, if you work it all the way out, and I would, if please, ends up being 30. So, oh wait, not 5 and 6. I'm sorry. Between 5 and, all right, you're going to have to do a little erasing. I'm sorry about that. Between 6 and 2. So the numbers are 6 and 2. Well, it'll end up being 6. 6 is the LCD. So the LCD is 6. So we multiply 1/2 by 3, because 1/2 times 3 ends up being 3/6. And when you subtract, you get 2/6, which then can be reduced. Divide by 2, you end up with 1/3. 1/3 is your final answer for this. All right, so evaluate when these numbers are here. Well, M is 7/8. minus n, which is 2/3. So the least common denominator for 8 and 3, well, let's see, that's 8, 16, 24. That would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. So 24, using this little list method, is the um, least common multiple. That means it's the least common denominator. So 7/8 is going to become a 24th. Minus 2/3 is going to become a 24th. Well, now you have to remember that to get to 24, you have to multiply by 3/3, and you have to multiply by 8/8. So my numerators now are 21 and 16. So 21 minus 16, 5/24, which is the simplest form. All right. So an additional part of your homework, please remember, is to do the CYUs, which are on page 266, and you should do 1 to 11. This will be what we work on in class. Good luck.